The city of Chicago's first steps to plug $1 billion budget gap.
A hiring freeze just announced by the mayor, meaning...
Did you guys hear that? Off rip, down bad, down $1 billion. They have $1 billion budget deficit in Chicago. Now, let me ask you guys this question. Where do you all think that budget deficit came from? Shout out to my man, Crew Reality. What's good with it, bro? Yo, make sure that you leave a comment after one of the streams or after one of the videos, and I will get you wrenched up over here, all right? Facts. You already know what it is. Shout out to DeAndre. What do that mean? Unsustainable. How long have we been saying it over here? You know what I'm saying?
Now to the city of Chicago's first steps to plug $1 billion budget gap.
A hiring freeze just announced by the mayor, meaning open positions can no longer be filled.
Our Sabrina Franco is always investigating. And Sabrina, that's just one of the steps put in place today.
A hiring freeze, but also a limitation on non-essential travel and overtime pay. We wanted to know what jobs were actually impacted and how the city plans to pay for the rest of its debts.
People's level of frustration is at an all-time high.
Now, how many people remember how much money was spent on Favorite Healthcare Staffing, which is the company that's been managing the migrant crisis in Chicago? You guys remember?
City leaders are weeks away from their 2025 budget negotiations. Before that, they're learning how the city plans to make up for an almost $250,000 gap in spending, pulling the reins in on overtime, travel expenses, and hiring city workers.
What traveling are we doing based on this significant budget gap? Why is that just now being discussed when we're going to be starting budget hearings in a matter of weeks? What I hear more and more in my community is, I don't want to see a massive property tax increase.
The city is looking at an almost $223 million deficit at the end of this fiscal year.
$223 million deficit. Isn't that about the exact amount that was spent on Favorite Healthcare? If that's about the amount that was spent on Favorite Healthcare, give me a thumbs up. If it's not, then give me a thumbs down. Also, for the people watching on the replay, gang, make sure you hit this comment up. Shout out to my man, AB Promotions. What's good with it, bro? And yo, make sure you see, shout out to my man, AB. You see how it says he didn't get a notification? On this channel, I have above average notifications. I have 43% of the people subscribed to hit the bell icon twice. So shout out to y'all, first of all, for hitting the bell icon twice. But even at that high rate, which is above YouTube average, because the high end of YouTube average is 25, people still are not getting the notifications. Make sure that you guys join that Discord. Make sure that you guys subscribe to my channel over on Rumble. And also, if one of the mods could put the link to the Undocumented Bros channel in the chat, make sure you guys are subscribed over there as well. All right.
In addition to a $982 million shortfall in 2025. Previously, the city has in part credited those numbers to drops in tax revenue.
It's a sizable deficit, but it's not the largest ones I've seen during my tenure.
We asked Alderman Jason Irvin, chair of the city's budget committee, what non-essential travel city leaders are doing.
I really couldn't give you an answer as to what. I don't know if that may be conferences or other places that people would go.
He tells us that most Chicago police and fire jobs are exempt from the hiring freeze, especially those roles it would likely impact jobs like these, desk jobs listed on the city's website.
The freeze as announced today only impacts the city of Chicago. It doesn't impact CTA, CPS, the Park District, or other entities, just the city of Chicago.
Mayor Brendan Johnson previously ran on not raising property taxes, though in a late August media briefing on the budget, he would not deny that he was considering a raise.
So it looked like we got another flip-flopper. If it looks like we got another flip-flopper, give me a thumbs up. If it don't look like we got another flip-flopper, give me a thumbs down.
It only impacts the city of Chicago. It doesn't impact CTA, CPS, the Park District, or other entities, just the city of Chicago.
Mayor Brendan Johnson previously ran on not raising property taxes, though in a late August media briefing on the budget, he would not deny that he was considering a raise. Experts agree the current cuts will not be enough to solve the problem.
It is to send a signal that the city is serious about trimming its costs and that there's more and more painful news yet to come.
There is also recognition within City Hall that these changes will not be enough to make up for this insane budget gap. Budget hearings begin next month. City Council has until December to pass a budget that they feel is balanced. In the newsroom, Sabrina Franza, CBS News, Chicago.
Now, I think it's interesting, right? In this little news clip, they didn't really go over what they thought the root causes of this situation might be. Now, if you ask me, it's very easy. Right? It's very easy to point to what the root causes of this situation in Chicago might be. I'm gonna let you guys tell it in the comment section. What do you guys think that the root causes of this might be? This is an article from the Chicago Tribune, and it says Mayor Brandon Johnson enacts citywide hiring freeze ahead of a $1 billion budget gap. $1 billion. That's huge. Now, let me ask you guys this. What do you all think will be Brandon Johnson's chances of being elected mayor a second term. What do you guys think? All right. So now here it says Mayor Brandon Johnson on Monday issued a hiring freeze on city government positions, including police, as his administration faces a nearly $1 billion budget shortfall next year. Okay, that's a lot of money. A statement sent out by his budget office said, effective today, we are enacting a series of budgetary restrictions, including a citywide hiring freeze and stringent limitations on non-essential travel and overtime expenditures outside of public safety operations. Now, I got a question for you guys. How many of you all remember when this was going on in New York City? If you guys remember when this was going on in New York City, give me a thumbs up. If you guys don't recall when this was going on in New York City, then give me a thumbs down. The statement did not say how many vacant positions or how much the city expects to save, and probably because they haven't planned out that far. The statement did not elaborate on whether rank and file police department and fire department positions would be effective, and representatives from Johnson's office did not immediately provide further details. And why is that? Because we never see Brandon Johnson's administration provide detail. Right? We never see Brandon Johnson's administration, give us details on anything. CPD's current academy class was already on city payroll when the hiring freeze went into effect. A police department spokesperson referred all questions about future academy classes to the mayor's office. The move comes as Johnson prepares for his second budget plan that he previewed last month as one that will entail sacrifices to close the fiscal shortfall. Now, you know what they didn't sacrifice? They didn't sacrifice any money on the migrant crisis. Can we say that? If you guys would agree, they didn't sacrifice any money on the migrant crisis, give me a thumbs up. If you guys would disagree and say, wait a minute, Rob, you're being unfair, well, then give me a thumbs down. Along with a new projection of a $223 million budget gap at the end of the current year. But his administration will need to come up with more solutions to raise revenues or cut costs in order to plug the hole. Okay, it's kind of, pause, right? Johnson's budget team has not publicly elaborated on what those sacrifices could entail, including whether raising property taxes is on the table. Now, remember, Johnson said that that's something that he would not do. Now, what is that going to do to him if he ends up raising property taxes against what he said he was going to do before? Monday's memo will likely be the first of many belt-tightening moves to close the gap. Budget Director Annette Guzman has said departments will also be asked to reduce other discretionary spending through the end of 2024. Factors contributing to the yawning budget holes include declines in revenue, rising labor costs, and a $175 million pension payment for non-teaching staff at Chicago schools that the school district is declining to take on. Now, what's interesting about this is that they didn't list the migrant crisis. They didn't list the migrant crisis in here to contributing to this at all. And we've all been tracking that. You can see the information on this channel. You know what I'm saying? The mayor is expected to recommend to the city council in October. He will then have until the end of the year to convince at least 26 to 50 aldermen to support the plan or make changes to get the majority he needs. It's not clear how long the hiring freeze will last. In 2019, former Mayor Lori Lightfoot also implemented a citywide hiring freeze ahead of her first budget plan that too faced a looming deficit. At the time, the police department was staffed with about 13,400 total officers, the largest roster since the 2000s. So again, there you go. As far as the police go, look what Democrats do in a Democrat city with the police. So this is what I'm saying about understanding things and having an ideological understanding of what these people do. Cutting the police or defunding the police, that would ideologically be something that conservatives would do, because conservatives believe in shrinking the government. The police are part of the government. There will never be a Democrat that defunds the police. It's just a talking point. It ideologically goes against leftist politics, defunding the police. Leftists don't defund the government. Leftists fund the government, which is why you get a lot of taxes. And this has nothing to do with partisan politics. This has to do with ideological understanding. If you guys would agree with that, give me a thumbs up. If you guys would disagree with that, then give me a thumbs down. So when a Democrat says they want to defund the police, that's a trick bag. The same way we explained in the Black Voter Monolith stream yesterday, when a leftist says that they have reparations on their platform, you have to ask them, well, how does that work in an equity equality model? It's not compatible. It's like saying go to a Christian church and get down on your knees and pray to Satan. It doesn't make sense. You can say it, but the question is, does it make sense? Is anybody going to take you to task on it? And if nobody takes you to task on it, then people will get away with saying anything. And that's what we see. We see a cycle of people saying anything, getting away with anything. And that is one of the ways that the gerbil wheel continues to have the kinetic energy that keeps it in motion and keeps the people who are inside of it going nowhere. You know what I'm saying? So now here it says that number has dwindled to 11,700 as of this July. However, following considerable police attrition starting around the C-19 pandemic, Johnson ran for mayor as a progressive who first challenged the amount of police spending in Chicago, but later the runoff vowed not to cut the police department budget by 1 penny. So again, as much as people may not like what I'm saying, gotta ask the question all the time, am I lying? And honestly, I believe that is why people do not like what I say, because I am not lying. People want to be lied to. Shout out to Roots Trackers. What's good with it? His budget plan for 2024 follows that edict, slightly raising the police budget to about $2 billion this year, right in line and parallel with leftist politics. Okay, how many examples of this kind of stuff do we got to go through? Whatever he chooses with public safety spending this year will surely be a contested debate among a city council that runs from the gamut from defund the police and staunchly pro law enforcement aldermen. However, because you guys know, shout out to Anthony Beale, right? Anthony Beale, he's all about it. And the thing is, I honestly think that the people of Chicago are actually all about it too. Because when we went over that thing with the shot spotter, you know, I was kind of shocked that Anthony Beale was in support of that, but he had a lot of people on his side. And Anthony Beale is one of the guys that is actually a Democrat that has stood up against the migrant crisis. You know what I'm saying? And he's kind of been on the right side of things with the migrant crisis. So I kind of tend to trust his judgment a little more with that situation as far as the police go in Chicago. Me personally, you know how I feel about the police, but seeing Anthony Beale's performance, I would trust his judgment. And I'm not from Chicago, so being from an outside perspective, I really don't have the prescription to that problem, just based on observation. You know what I'm saying? So now here it says over the summer, the city saw an incremental decrease in homicides for the third consecutive summer, though killings and non-fatal shootings between June and August still outpaced pre-pandemic levels, according to a Tribune review of city violence data. Aldermen present at the City Hall Monday when the hiring freeze announcement came said they were unsurprised by the news, though some were skeptical of applying it to police and fire department. Some of us have been waiting for this. We have known for some time that we had a very significant budget gap, said Alderman Matt O'Shea, 19th. But including police and fire personnel was unacceptable. Alderman Byron Shigo Lopez, 25th, a close Johnson ally, responded to questions about the hiring freeze by speaking broadly on the need to cut costs. And if you ask me, that's one of the Brandon Johnson strategies, is to quote unquote speak broadly about things. You know what I'm saying? He never really gives a lot of detail, if you notice. I think it is important that the city looks for every resource to ensure that we balance the budget without sacrificing important services for the city, especially not burdening working class families across the city that are already struggling to make ends meet, he said. Alderman Derek Curtis, 18th, said there is no reason the city should enact a hiring freeze that affects first responders. We already cut 2,000 members short at the Chicago Police Department, Curtis said. We don't need any more cuts. All right. So what I find interesting about this is that in this article from the Chicago Tribune, when discussing the budget and the budget deficit, not one mention of the migrant crisis.